There you go. Have everybody coming in here now.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone had a nice long weekend. I'm sure it was a busy tax weekend for all. Alrighty. And Jack, are you able to see my screen all right?
Yep, we can see everything. We look set up here.
Perfect. Perfect. We'll give it another minute or two for folks to come in. But just want to introduce myself. I'm Rebecca. I am one of our team's accountants and head of QA. So I handle essentially the audits of our system to ensure everything is sound from a tax logic perspective. And then joining me today, as I'm sure many of you know, is Jack. He is one of our co-founders and our head of AI. Apologies, that was my cat joining our call too. And so let's go ahead and I'll start to get started. Before we jump in, feel free to introduce yourself in the webinar chat or where you're calling out of. And I'm excited to kick this off. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started since it's just a 30-minute demo today. So today we're focusing on Drake integration, and we are going to kind of talk you all through kind of the start to end of our product and every aspect of it, and getting your company and your system set up with both Juno and the Drake integration. And for those of you that maybe aren't necessarily Juno clients yet, and you're just interested in learning more, this demo is definitely going to go a bit into the weeds of things as we're getting pretty detailed for our communities and clients and want to really share with them kind of the minute details. But feel free to ask any and all questions in our webinar chat. We'll definitely be monitoring it and answering them as we go, and we're happy to kind of chat through it. And so for today's demo in particular, we're first going to run through a handful of slides where it's going to kind of talk you through kind of the different steps of using Juno and the Drake integration associated. Then Jack's going to go into a more in-depth demo, so really kind of walking through every aspect of the product that I discussed and showing for you guys live what Juno looks like and how it works with the Drake software. So we'll definitely jump right in. And once again, feel free to ask any questions as we walk through this. Anything else, Jack, you want to add before we kick this off?
Nope, that's a great high level. Glad to be back here, guys. Great to see some of you again.
Awesome. So, getting started with Juno, for those of you that are already clients, I'm sure you're very familiar with this process. We're pretty strict in the sense of we do ask our customers to complete a trial before getting onboarded. Of course, if you love Juno and you want to jump right in, that's completely fine. But we definitely like to have that trial phase to allow potential clients to get a feel for the system and what we do. And we have an amazing customer support and customer onboarding team. So essentially, once you have decided you're all in on Juno, you'll get a one-on-one call with them, and they will essentially walk you through what I'm about to share and essentially help install the Juno desktop app, which is where our integration lives for Drake, and kind of go through all those kind of minute details associated to settings you need to have on or off to allow our integration to run properly. But just a high level for you to see here, and also note that this video and these slides will be shared after our demo days. So definitely feel free to reference these after going through these, and definitely we recommend sharing these with your tax firm and everybody associated in the process of using Juno. So high level, it's really easy actually to import your clients and get things set up with Juno. So once you install the Juno desktop app, there is kind of a very specific set of steps you need to do to actually get Juno synced to Drake and the integration app and how you export the clients. So here you can see some specific images that kind of walks you through it. So essentially for client import, you're going to go to client reports and you're going to go to contact list. And then you're going to export your contact list with these specific settings. And it's really that easy. You export it as an CSV, and then you drop that right into Juno. As you can see right here, it asks you to choose this file. And essentially, once you've done that, you are all synced, and your client list from Drake now also is synced up with Juno and all of the work you do in Juno. So this is definitely kind of the first item that our team will walk you through. So once you've been synced up and you're ready to go and using Drake and Juno, and yeah, thank you, Jack, for that call out. We definitely do support 2025. That was misinformation on the slides. But kind of going through this next step. So the main part of our product is Preparer. And so Prepara essentially is where we're going to actually process all of your source documents. So for those of you that have been using this product or gone through the trial, you would be pretty familiar with this already. So essentially, you select and build out individual clients. Once you've done your client sync, the client should live there, or you can create individual clients throughout the tax season. You essentially drop all your source documents and they're associated to your client. You can upload up to 50 source documents at a time. So that's what this page looks like. Then when you upload the source document, you're going to essentially be met with one of these screens. So it kind of walks you through each of the document types. It'll let you know if it's been validated, which essentially means you have gone through, or the AI has gone through the system, pulled out all the data necessary. But then you can also click on each individual document, and when you pull it up, it'll look like this. So here we have a 1099 B, and you can see the individual fields of data that has been extracted from the source documents. And here it says they're validated. But as you can see right here, if our AI wants you to review something, it's going to flag it for review or say it's possibly missing. So then essentially you go through each of these line items individually and either adjust the data that is in that box and or validate it yourself. And then once you have validated all your source documents for your client, you're going to move on to the export. And something else that's really nice is if for some reason the AI isn't necessarily reading your source document properly, you are able to manually enter the form and its data associated. And then, we have some specific kind of high level items we wanted to flag here. Um, you know, Possibly missing, flag for review and validated are kind of the key items here. But we definitely do recommend everybody to kind of go through each of the documents and just confirm high level that all our data that was extracted looks good to go. And then from there, multi-form PDFs. We do accept multi-form PDFs, but we do recommend individual PDFs for each form for a quicker process and to make it 100% accurate. It definitely tends to work better in that capacity, but we do accept multi-form PDFs. And then we also have various settings that allow you to uh, really handle the form management and handle what your users and your team are responsible for and what they've done with the clients in the system. So the next kind of part of this process is then once you have validated your clients, you're ready to export them, you're going to configure your Drake settings for seamless export. Now, I won't go into the nitty gritty here, but there are some pretty specific items. So one-time Drake settings that you need to change for us to be able to export properly. W-2 wage verifications need to be off. Missing field warnings need to be set to never. Grid data entry is on, audible alerts is off, and pause calculations to after view or print only. And we do have articles that walk through all of this as well. So as you can see here, these are screenshots of what we expect the data to look like and how we want your settings to be set before you do your first export. And it is definitely really important to make sure these are accurate before you move forward with the process, as otherwise the export may not occur properly. And then essentially, once you have those all set, you will be prompted with this ability to what's called scan Drake for existing forms. So that's essentially you connecting to a client, and Juno will confirm if any of the forms have actually been exported yet or already live within your client. So that's just kind of a way for us to check and confirm that everything looks good and you're not exporting twice. And then you can decide which forms you want to do an export on. And then you basically say export to Drake. You click a button. You're going to watch the AI magic happen. And then once the export is complete, all your data will pop up like this. And that's how you know that the data has been inputted, is because you will see pretty clearly on the client return page all the data that now exists within the various documents. And then it will say export complete. And then these are just some kind of quick, like high level tips and tricks we recommend, and the most common items that essentially cause problems or need troubleshooting. But definitely, we have a pre-export checklist. We highly recommend you guys checking that out on support.juno.tax. But some quick things are, we always want Drake to be a full screen window. We definitely recommend always doing the scan step, but if you do need to skip it, you need to be really cautious, because that's when you can create duplicate forms or overwrite existing data. So we really do recommend you always scan. When you are doing the export, we recommend you kind of do your hands off and you just don't touch the mouse or the keyboard, and you let the export happen. And you'll see this happen live in the demo next with Jack. And then also, really making sure your Drake settings are accurate before the export begins. That's really, really important. And then also making sure that when you're exporting, your client return is open and visible before the export begins. Otherwise, Drake will not be able to find the client to actually export the data. And then making sure that your Drake tax season is up to date. So making sure that you have selected the right year for the data that you are exporting for your client. So those are kind of the high level items on my side. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and let Jack take over. He's going to jump in with the demo. And before we begin the demo, I know we had quite a few questions, and I'll hop in the Q&A. Is there anything you want to flag real quick, Jack, before we jump into the demo?
No, I'm gonna go ahead and get started with the demo here. Just because I think as I do this, I might answer some folks' questions. So what I have up here is the Juno app, and then I have a client tax software demos. I've already uploaded some documents to Juno, so you can see my client here. And then within these documents, I've got a couple of basic stuff. I'm not going too crazy just for the sake of time today. The first part, if you want, once you want to enter the data into Drake, go ahead and click the client that you want to enter for, and you're going to be met with this screen here. So like Rebecca had said, and there were some questions on this as far as Juno creating duplicates or not. So we have to pre-scan your Drake instance to read what documents are already there before we enter the data. Now, the Drake example I'm going to show you here, you can see there are no forms actually entered anywhere. So in this case, I'm not going to scan it to start, but I will show the scan functionality after I enter some data, just so you can see what this looks like. But the normally the only issue that you would have regarding Juno duplicating or creating new entries is because you hadn't scanned the documents beforehand. And so, like I said, we'll show that afterwards. But for right now, I'm going to skip the scan, and it's going to load all of my documents up here. So you can see I've got the documents, the form types, and some issuer information showing up here. I've already exported some of these as I was testing using this client, but I'm going to go ahead and just pre-select everything to add. You'll also notice that we track like when the individual documents were last exported, so you can see that. Just so in case you have a client upload documents later, they can go through the system and you can re-export just those documents, but ensure that you're skipping all of the previously exported ones like these here. So do make sure that if you do have to add another document a few weeks after you've already run one of the exports, that you're setting the previously exported items to skip. And like you saw when I initially loaded it up, it does preset those to skip for you. So it's fairly foolproof. Just make sure you're doing that though. So once I've got everything set here, I'm just going to go ahead and export these to Drake. I am going to skip this second Schedule C, but one call out on the Schedule Cs, and I will call this out as they get entered into Drake. But when you have the Schedule C in the human loop screen here, you have an option that's within each of these categories to toggle whether or not the all of the individual items within that category get exported, or if you're going to export just the category total, right? So this is often up to firm preference. This is often also dependent on the client specifically. In this case, I'm going to show you this Schedule C where I have preset the all of the individual items for gross receipts or sales, but all of the other ones I have selected the category total. And so you're going to see it enter just the total for those items, but gross receipts or sales, it's going to enter everything. So once I've got that ready to go, the last thing is just making sure you have your tax return open in Drake. The Juno app will not go in and automatically open the tax return. You'll want to make sure that that is already set within Drake, ready to go on this exact screen here. Once everything's ready, I go ahead and hit export to Drake. It's going to make a call out, just making sure I've got the correct client open and active, and then I go ahead and hit continue. At this point, it's hands off. The biggest mistake that we see folks make is that even by shaking their mouse, moving it, clicking at things like that can totally break the import process. So call this phase basically go get coffee, go use the bathroom if you need to, whatever you might need to do. It does take over your computer. That's a necessity as far as how the Drake import works because there's no APIs, there's no other way for us to enter it in. So our automation just works just like a person would, where it keys all the data in, and you can see it doing that here. A couple of callouts as this runs. We've got the 1099 miscellaneous here, and you see where it says 4 at the top, and I actually am going to hover over this right here, 4C. So that 4C basically means that it's going to input this 1099 miscellaneous form onto the Schedule C, and it's going to input it into the first index. It did go a little bit quick here, so I can go back at the end and show you guys exactly what this means. But one of the things that we allow you to do in the preset configurations before you run the Drake import process is for a 1099 miscellaneous or a 1099 NEC or a 1098, you can actually choose what schedule it applies to and which index of that schedule it might apply to. Again, I'll come back to that at the end. I'm going to let this run for a little bit and just kind of stay silent. Rebecca, do you have anything quickly to add?
No, not right now. Answering a couple questions, have a couple items that I'll flag at the end of this, but this is looking great, Jack. Thank you.
Perfect. And so now we're going to enter the Schedule C. One thing that we do is you just saw it enter New York for the state. I do not have the Schedule C set to New York for the state. The reason that we do this is for us to navigate the Schedule C properly, we need to actually set the state to New York, which unlocks a couple of fields, but it will go back at the end and clean up by removing New York from the state process there. What we just saw it do there too was it entered the individual line items, like I said, for gross receipts, whereas we're seeing it just enter the total for each of these other categories because that's what I had selected on the Juno Human in the Loop page. So we get that question a lot as far as like, hey, I'm only seeing totals or I'm always seeing the line items and I want one or the other. You can go ahead and set that beforehand. Again, it's not something that we are just taking complete control over. We're giving you the decision-making power, but it's often just not fully known what those toggles are for or how to set them. So we'll go ahead and let this one finish out here. And then you'll see at the end, it's about to do its cleanup process where it's going to go ahead and enter the EIN and then delete the state there. And it's going to now continue on to the next part of the return. Oh, looks like that was actually the last form. So that is the data entry piece for Drake here. Let me go ahead and, oh, okay. Oh, I accidentally was trying to move this guy up into the corner, but I deleted the app. Well, anyways, as I reload the app here, I'm going to go ahead and just show you here quick. I'll open up the 1099 miscellaneous form and we can see that it's for Schedule C. But again, we can set which schedule or which part of the form that this goes into. And then multi-form code. If you have multiple Schedule Cs, this is where you're going to select which index of that Schedule C you're going to want. And I can go ahead and show you that here. One second. I've just got the app on a different screen, just pulling it up here. Okay.
And also, Jack, in a similar manner, we had a question if you could show kind of the best practices to having data inputted into existing W-2s or 1098s. So this goes hand in hand with the scanning and indexing, if you could show that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and show the scan right now. So the scan is going to work the same way, where before you run the scan, you just want to have the return open to this screen here. And the scan, of course, you would normally do the scan first, and then you would enter the data. In this case, just because I didn't have data in there, I did the data entry first. But just to show you what the scan does, I'm going to go ahead and hit scan existing forms here. Again, you're going to see, hey, before starting, just make sure your page looks like this, and I'll hit start scan. So it's going to go back to Drake and basically do the same thing that we had kind of done before. But instead of entering data, it's just going to read all of the data. And sometimes this is interesting. It does take a little bit to get started. I'm wondering if my Zoom is interacting with everything because I'm looking at my computer and it is maxed out right now. Okay, here we go. So actually, that's kind of an important thing to note. We built the Juno app to basically make sure that it's not overloading your computer. So I'm running this on a fairly old Windows laptop here. And so one thing it was doing was waiting until it had computationally enough resources to then begin the actual process. So it's not going to just start doing some crazy things. So if you ever see it wait for a little bit, that's often what it's waiting for, is just kind of waiting for your computer to let it know that it's got um, enough power to get started here. So you can see here, we're just flipping through a bunch of the W-2s here. We just did a 1099 before this. The reason why you see it flip through so many times is actually very intentional. Oftentimes when data is pulled over from a prior year to a current year, we might see that information not have an EIN, but it might have like a name or a payer's name or some other piece of information there. So what we're doing is we're flipping through and scanning a whole bunch of different information to make sure that we do have every single possible form. By default, when we built this early last year, we had built it assuming that every single prior year form would have an EIN on it or some payers information. But that's not always the case. We have to build this for every possible firm and every possible scenario. So it is a little bit mundane, and we're looking to see what ways we can improve the time on the scan. But that's the reason why you see it flip through so many times. And then once the scan is done, let's see here, scan complete. So pull the Juno app back up. And then what you're going to see as far as options go, and this is how you want to make sure you're preventing yourself from creating a duplicate or a new version of the form. Let's say this W-2 here, I had to update the data on the Juno web app here, or something had changed. Now this would be a really rare case, but if you had to, you can just choose the index one. And when I export this, it's actually going to export it to this version of the W-2. You can see the EIN right here. And the NA just means that there's no name on the W-2. And of course, my W-2 didn't have a name. So that's why when it did the data entry, it didn't add any name for the employer. But if I go ahead and look at the 1099 miscellaneous here that I entered and then rescanned, you're going to see the issuer name does show up here. And so does the EIN number. So you have both of those things to map on. And then the last quick thing is, again, with the 1099, you can choose which schedule it goes into, which index of that schedule. All of this gets preset on this screen here before you do the data entry. So just make sure if your schedule, or sorry, if your 1099 is supposed to go to a particular schedule, that you're setting those pieces up front here before the data actually gets pushed into Juno. So I'll pause there and we can take a look at some questions here. Rebecca, I don't have my Zoom up, so if you want to call anything out that folks want to see or go through, I'd be happy to walk through some of that.
Yeah, definitely. Let me pull up a couple questions we have left. Um, so one question here is for following the process of moving clients from TaxDome into Juno, and then we'll follow this on getting them. Can you just talk through that process a bit more? There's been a couple
Mhm.
questions associated with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is earlier in the process here. Now, if I'm not a TaxDome user, I'm going to upload my documents to Juno just by dragging and dropping them in here. But if I am a TaxDome user, the only difference between everything that I've showed you so far is that instead of dragging and dropping your documents here in TaxDome, which I don't have logged into right now, but there is a send to Juno button that you'll see. And upon clicking that, you can select which files you want to send over, and they'll all get sent over. That will actually create the client within Juno dynamically. So you don't have to, if you're a TaxDome user, you actually don't have to do that upfront client sync. During your onboarding call, our customer support rep would go through all of this with you, just kind of explaining why we do this. But the TaxDome integration allows us to actually not need to sync backwards from the tax software into Juno. It's all just based on whatever information is coming from TaxDome. We build that into Juno dynamically for you, so you don't have to do any other client syncs.
Awesome. Could you talk through, we had a question about why we may not necessarily export addresses, streets, cities, et cetera.
Yeah, so this is a Drake nuance. I'm actually glad this one was asked because I didn't go over it. So you'll notice here on the W-2 that I had it run in, it didn't enter any of the address or employer information. Now, if I go into here, you'll see that I actually don't have any of that on here. This is a W-2 which has everything blocked out for the demo. But normally what actually happens with Drake is if I add the zip code, it will add all of that previous information dynamically. So what we do is, and let me see here. I think this is a legitimate zip code. Okay, yep. So I enter 53121. That's the town that I grew up in. But you'll see it automatically populate that here. The other thing that Drake does automatically is when you enter the EIN, if this EIN was for a previous existing W-2, it'll enter all of the information right here. And then if in that case we still don't have the information going through, it will be entering the name of the employer up here, but we don't enter the street and the city because that gets overwritten by the zip code anytime we touch that. The reason we don't try to do both is because Drake quite literally will just crash sometimes if we try to enter the city and the street, and then the zip code as well. We've seen it crash in the past, so it is a little bit of an odd thing that occurs. We're not quite sure why Drake does crash in this case. It's actually this specific bug is posted on their site, but the workaround for us is to only enter the zip code because at very minimum, if the zip code is entered in here, Drake will actually populate the city and the state for us. Obviously not the street address, but that's the reason. There's a lot of little, kind of nuances with Drake that cause us to have to do certain things versus not. So always feel free to ask that question. And our support team is really, really good about understanding all of those nuances too. So if you ever have any questions, go ahead and feel free to go to them.
Yeah, and a quick call out there too is we have support.juno.tax where everything we've essentially shared lives in a bunch of articles under Drake as well. So we definitely recommend you guys reviewing those before you get started with the tax season and sharing that with your team because it'll go through all these tips and tricks in great detail.
Absolutely. And
Uh,
then very last thing just to add quick, and then any other questions we'll go through remaining. Uh, Juno again has a fundamental philosophy of only entering data, not overwriting. One thing that I didn't get to show was with the Schedule C, we entered and created a brand new Schedule C. If you were to have another Excel sheet, like another P&L come in and have to re-add data to that Schedule C, you can set it to that index. And what Juno will actually do is it will go through and read all of the line items that are existing. It will not delete or modify any of those. It will just add new line items below those existing ones. So just as a fundamental rule of thumb, know that we're not going to delete or modify any information. But that also means if you had used this tax return, sometimes at extension season, people use these to add numbers to fudge for projection purposes. You'll want to make sure that you remove or delete that data and clean up the return before Juno goes in and enters the data. Treat it like a junior preparer, right? If you're going to tell a junior preparer who has really no context on what you've done with this return, they're probably going to play it safe and just enter the data rather than deleting anything that was existing. So it's really on you guys to make sure that the return is set up properly and ready to go before Juno enters into any information.
a quick question we had was someone was wondering if Juno can read QuickBooks financial statements for an import.
So we are actually building the business return integrations right now. So we're looking for somewhere this summer to be launching that live, and we will have a QuickBooks integration with that, but not for this tax season.
Awesome. And Gary, read the processed info from Juno to Drake using Textome. That's what Jack went over. Essentially, when you integrate Textome with Juno, you send over the clients, and essentially it'll pop up initially once you start using the Juno app and you've been all set up and good to go on the preparer side. And our customer support team will walk you through that process. So it'll be pretty straightforward on actually getting all your clients over from Textome.
Yep. And again, everything that we showed today does not matter if you're Taxdome or otherwise. This is the exact same process. The only difference with Taxdome is that when you're inputting all of your clients and your documents into Juno, it's like one click of a button and everything can go right in there. But again, the focus on today is just on the Drake integration and nuances with that. Nothing that we've said as far as how that works is any different between Taxdome and non-Taxdome users.
And then one
And then,
last
yep, go ahead.
question we had was, are they able to add more than one client at a time? Can they do bulk client, yeah, additions?
Yeah, I wish we could on if you have more than one computer set to the same server, you could because that would be kind of like multiple teammates. But if you think about it in this way, like I couldn't go in here and edit multiple returns in Drake at the same time. Just like the Juno app would not be able to do that either. It's just a limitation we have on Drake. There's no way we can really get around it because the only way we can enter information is by literally keying it in. We don't mess with Drake software at all. We don't touch the data under the hood. We don't do anything with that. We quite literally key it in exactly like you would. And so in doing that, the limitation is that we can only do one return at a time.
Yeah, and so thank you guys again today. If you have any final questions, feel free to add them. Definitely feel free to email support@juno.tax if you have any farther specific questions. And we definitely encourage everyone to take a look at support.juno.tax, where we have a plethora of articles that not only talk through kind of our tax logic and, what source documents we accept, what data we accept and process, but it also walks through kind of the step-by-step process of integrating Drake and your exports there. And there are also videos included of the demos of all of those processes. And in addition to that, we definitely encourage everyone to take a look at this at a later date. You are more than welcome to review. And Jack, you
I
have
am
anything else?
gonna yeah, I'm gonna show one last quick thing, just and I'm happy to sit over a little bit if some folks would like to. You actually can use AI renaming on your documents. So if you go to organization and then organization settings here, if you turn this on, if you hit save, and then if I go back into prepare here, I'll grab the tax software demo, and now you can see my documents have been AI renamed. Of course, these are not very specific names because I've blanked out most of the information, like I said, on the W-2 and the Schedule C. But if you had noticed before, these were not the original names. The original names were very mundane in comparison. So you can use AI renaming. That's a feature that we just launched fairly recently here.
Awesome. I love it when new features come out. I didn't even know that was out yet. Love to see it. Thank you for flagging that, Jack. Awesome. And then I think one last question I see from Jan: when sending files from Taxstone to Juno, the status of files say error. For what caused the error, we would just recommend you directly reach out to support at juno.tax with the client associated, because then essentially our team can take a look on the back end of things to let you know exactly what that error is and hop on a call with you or answer and get that sorted out nice and quickly. So thanks for flagging that, Jan.
And we did have on the Taxstum side, there was an error that they had with how they were sending information to Juno. That should have been fixed as of last Friday, actually. So if you're still seeing that, of course, like Rebecca said, send it to support at juno.tax, but there's also a good chance that the fix has gone out and would fix this for you specifically.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Well, thank you guys so much for spending this time with us. And there's also always office hours on Wednesday where you have the ability to talk with some tax experts and our CEO a little bit farther. Definitely join our Modern Tax Pros community channel. where we have a lot of support articles and questions and information being answered there daily. And take a look at support.juno.tax to answer any and all questions you might have related to this process. But yeah, thank you guys for being a part of our first demo day this week. And feel free to email us at support@juno.tax with any other questions you guys might have. And we will be sending out both this demo video and the slides associated. So you are more than welcome to reference and everything that we chatted about today. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
All right.